Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Resident Rulebreakers. My name is Kayla.
And I'm Camille.
And today's podcast is very special. It's
going to be different.
We have a very special guest on our podcast this week, which we'll get to in a moment. But before we get to him, we want to discuss the topic of the next episode of The Resident called If Not Now, When, written by Amy Holden Jones and Chris and Tiana. I can't pronounce their last names to save my life, so don't ask me to. I will butcher them.
I think it's Besunian or Tiana Langham, I think.
Okay. So, but Amy had a very hands-on on this episode. It's very important to bring this message to light for the person behind the story, for the family behind what happened, and to bring these statistics to light. We're talking about maternal mortality death in the United States.
Yes.
Last week we mentioned that the United States is the worst country in the developed world to give birth in. And according to NPR, since 2000, the maternal mortality rate has been gradually climbing, whereas the rest of the countries in the developed world, most of them are in Europe, are going down.
I think it's just sad that, we're supposed to be the best country in the world, but we're the worst country to give birth in. We're the worst country to start a life, pretty much.
And you would think, when you think of the United States, you think of all this technology in our healthcare system being good, until you get to this statistic.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're discussing this is this episode is bringing these stats to light, and not only these, but the story behind Dixon Johnson.
Yes.
And 4Kira4Moms.
Yes.
We've touched on this already before with what happened to her.
Yeah.
Kara went in for a routine C-section at Cedars-Sinai in California, and she didn't come out alive.
There was blood in the catheter or the urine bag thing. Her husband had been trying to get the attention of doctors and nurses for hours, but they kept delaying it, saying she's a CT, but because it's not an emergency. And so finally, when they did the CT and stuff, they saw the blood in her abdomen and then she went to the emergency room, and there was so much blood. She was internally bleeding for hours before they finally did the surgery, and sadly she passed away on the table. And now her husband and her family have started an organization called 4Kira4Moms, where they go to Congress and different places to spread the story of what happened to her, to try to affect change. Charles Johnson, which is Kira's widower, he's trying to affect change in laws to try to prevent this from happening to another woman.
And to bring this to light, California is one of the safest states in the United States to give birth in.
Yep.
They are one of the only states in the United States to have their maternal mortality rate decline compared to the rest of them.
Yeah.
Compared to the state of Georgia, which is where The Resident is not only filmed, but based. It's the second worst state to give birth.
Yes.
It's staggering, and not only that, but the disparity between the races. Kara was a black woman, And they're going to point out, they already have in the video that they released earlier in the week, they already pointed out that black women are more likely to die from giving birth than a white woman.
Yeah, 273%
More.
chance of that, which is sad. It's a really sad thing. I mean, I'm so glad that the Resident is doing this. It's like taking the story of the Johnsons and putting it into their show and stuff.
I'm so glad that they're bringing real life problems to light.
Yep.
And but there's so many things. I mean, I'm reading this article, and the CDC can't really tell you why the statistics between the races are so different. No one can really point it out as to why this happens.
Nope. It's just a sad reality. Sad.
It is. But the story you're going to see in If Not Now When is Kara's story.
Yep.
And not only is it the story, it's also the anniversary of her death. April 13th.
Friday was the birthday of the son that she gave birth to. So, yeah, she died like the day after giving birth to her son.
So, everything, this story is being timed to not only honor Kara's legacy, but to bring awareness to the problem.
Yep.
And I applaud the Resident for this. Thank you, Amy, Chris, Tiana, the rest of the Resident writers and crew. And, keep fighting, Charles. So, it's just staggering to see. I mean, I've got multiple articles pulled up about this, and it's heartbreaking to read it. And so, our beginning of the podcast, we mentioned we had a special guest. Our special guest is the actor who's going to be portraying Charles's character in the show, Kamal Bolden. And Kamal has wonderfully agreed to talk to us about his time on set and working with the writers and meeting Charles and talking about this horrible, horrible story.
Yeah, he plays Wade Davies.
Yes, his name is Wade Davies in the episode.
And his character will be based on Charles Johnson's. Charles was actually on set during the filming of this episode. So I'm most curious to know what it's like to portray this man while he's watching you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would imagine that's gotta be like more pressure.
I mean, I've worked on a few film sets in my life. I can't imagine having the person that you're being based off of watching you.
Yeah.
And not only this, but this story that is incredibly traumatic that he lived playing out in front of him.
Yeah, that's a bit disconcerting. I would imagine that if I had a movie based on my life, I would probably not be able to watch it.
No, I wouldn't. So, without further ado, we're going to go into our interview with Kamal.
Hey, Kamal, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us again. For the listeners, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, about where you're from, how you started into acting and stuff?
Oh, yeah. The exposition. Yes. My name is Kamal Bolden, and I originally come from the great land of Peoria, Illinois. Yes. Which is about 2.5 hours south of Chicago, and it's the birthplace of Richard Pryor also. But anyway, I
I
digress.
saw that on your biography or your IMDb. You were like,
Yes. Got a name drop. I used to say I was like his third cousin removed on his father's side or something like that. But you never know. We can do a 23andMe and find out. I don't know.
Ancestry.com.
Ancestry.com. There's got to be something in there somewhere. But I hailed from there. I went to school at the same college of my hometown, Bradley University, and I majored in business entrepreneurship. But I just found that wasn't my true life's calling. So I worked in corporate America for about 3 years before I quit, and I started doing community theater. And I've been doing theater ever since. And I moved to Los Angeles about 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago, to pursue, television and film opportunities after being in Chicago and New York doing theater. And
I saw you were on Chicago PD, or was it Fire?
Chicago Fire, yes. I did a
so you did some hometown.
Yeah. That was a best experience, honestly. I mean, I got so much respect for those actors because you're really wearing all of that stuff. You're really performing a lot of your own stunts. So that was awesome. But and now I'm in Los Angeles, still doing theater. I still go back to Chicago every now and then and do theater. And I've been blessed a couple of about 4 weeks ago we filmed this episode of The Resident down in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely gripping from beginning to end. Even the audition process was gripping. So I'm really excited about tomorrow night's episode. I'm really excited about it airing and people seeing this true story.
Yeah.
It's a very sad story. And I said, we were talking about the statistics behind it all in this particular podcast. But you said the audition process was very gripping. How did it go for you?
Normally, when we get auditions, we have one of two options out here in Los Angeles and across the country, but mostly in Los Angeles, you're either gonna tape your audition at your home or at an actual business, or you're going to go into the casting office. And when I received this audition, they stressed in all caps that this was a very important episode. And when I got if it's not enough pressure auditioning for a television show as it is, they were like, this is a very important role. Please come very, very much prepared. And it's going to be an emotional thing. And they were looking for specifics. And so I coached with some, friends of mine, and, I did a lot of the research, and I knew it was based off a true story of Kira Dixon Johnson and Charles Johnson IV. And so going into the room, there was just like a little bit of anxiety, just knowing that I was going to be portraying a true life story that was, like you said, tragic.
Yeah. So it's like you knew from the get-go.
Yes, exactly.
How much backstory did you know about Charles and Kira?
I was very vaguely aware of this story a year ago. Some friends were talking about it. They were, because his mother is a famous, respected judge. So, and I'm talking about Charles Johnson IV. So I remember hearing of it, but the casting office, as well as my representative, sent me a lot of YouTube videos to watch, and they were absolutely heartbreaking. Watched those before the audition. It was just like, oh my God, like, I don't care who gets this role, but I know when I go into this room, I just want to, from a spiritual sense, give as much of myself over to it as possible, just to pay respect. So when I went into the room, the casting director was very gracious. We talked before we even auditioned, and then we went into the audition, and I came out on the other side, on the good side of it, by snagging the role, which is a privilege.
Yeah. Did you feel extra pressure knowing that it was real? Like, compared to like if it was just a fictional character or whatever.
Right. Yeah, Camille, it's like I'm lucky to have done a lot of theater, and in my theater career, I've played some notable, real life characters, but they've all just been posthumous. You know what I mean? And so like Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson, and playing these characters, there's a certain weight to history that you put on yourself unnecessarily as an actor. So I did learn before to no longer put that weight on myself to uphold all of the history, but to just bring the humanity of the situation and myself to the character. And then most recently, about 2 years ago, I did a spec pilot in Chicago. Some more Chicago work about some real life cops from the 80s and 90s, and still living. And they were very much a part of the process. They came to rehearsals. And that was another opportunity for me to realize, hey, I'm not supposed to mimic this guy. It's not about trying to stick this impression. It's more about finding out where he was in this time of life and what are the obstacles in the way of his desires and goals. And so I did because I had those experiences, I alleviated myself of some of this pressure going into the audition as well as performing this role for the resident.
Wow. That's just so... Okay. Fun.
So what was it like with Charles on the set?
Good question about Charles is that I got to Atlanta. Atlanta is a beautiful city to work in, first of all. But I flew there, and the first day on set that I got there, I'm sorry, I may have gotten there, let's say, a Wednesday, and then I didn't get on set until like Friday. He was on set that Thursday. He was on set the day before. And everyone spoke about Charles's his charisma, his humanity, his excitement about this story. And so I was like, oh, is he coming back? I'm trying to figure out what am I going to say? I don't want to be awkward. It's almost like meeting a real life hero because, I've watched so many of these inspirational videos of his story. Fortunately and unfortunately, he had a lot of other commitments with this show as well as all of the work he's doing in his real life, in addition to being a father of two boys. And I didn't get a chance to meet him. We didn't get a chance to talk. And it's probably, like I said, fortunately, because I probably would have put too much pressure on myself to, I don't know, I would have just been nervous to meet him, But
he does seem like a superhero. He does seem like a real superhero. I mean, with all the work that he's doing, raising awareness, plus also being a single father and, taking care of two boys and, trying to make a change, it just seems like a lot.
Yes, exactly. Everything you just said. So there could have been some jewels I could have gained from him, by meeting him. But I did a lot of the work, and I talked to other cast members on the set that met him. And, and again, like I said, I've watched every single video he's been in on YouTube. So I was very, well prepared to undertake the role. But hopefully I will meet him now that the work is done. And so either in, Atlanta or he'll come out here and be doing work. So I'll meet him soon.
Cool. Sean, who did you work with the most on the show? Based on the promo pics, it looks like Manish and Bruce.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The majority of it was Manish, and wow, and of course, beautiful actress that played my wife, Vanessa Antoine.
Vanessa, I love her.
Yeah,
I'm a huge GH fan, General Hospital fan. So when I saw she was guest starring, I was like, oh my God, General Hospital.
You fanned out, yes. And she's very big in Canada, where she's from. So
yes,
she's very big there. She had a series that was literally premiering at the same time we were doing ours, Bigstown. So she had that going on, a mini series there, and she's the first Black actress to lead a primetime show in Canada.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very awesome. So when I met her, she was glowing from just all the overwhelming support and fanship and all of that. So those are the two actors, Manish and Vanessa, that I work with the most. And Manish is very much like his character on the show, in terms of just the charm and the heart and the graciousness and everything. First day on set, walking into the hair and makeup trailer, he was already there. And, he's getting all gussied up or whatever. And, he just stopped and was like, hey, you're Kamal. He knew who I was. Hey, welcome to the show. I came over, I shook his hand, and we just, he asked me where I was from, and all those type of things, those questions where you get to know each other on the set. I sat down in the hair and makeup chair next to him, and we just talked and about his family and his experience on the show. He's been in so many things. So, this guy is to be so young, but have such a story. It was cool working with him.
Yeah, it was so funny when I first heard that Manish was on the show. I didn't realize until I seen him on the pilot. I was like, wait, I've seen him on many other things.
Oh yeah, he's a very recognized face.
And he's actually worked with Matt before he on The Good Wife. He was in an episode of The Good Wife with Matt.
Yeah. Yes.
I never saw an episode of The Good Wife.
I'm the Matt Zuckery fan in the bunch here. So
yes. I think
Did
we're all
you work with Matt?
Huh?
Did you work with Matt? Kamal?
No, but Matt was in the hair and makeup trailer one day to do something on a different set, and one of the coolest things about it was Matt leads the show. Matt's number one on the call sheet, and he's the biggest star of the show. And he said, "Hey man, I've been hearing so many great things about this episode. Thank you." He thanked me, and I was like, "Wow!" It's like, "Yo, thank you so much for being here and doing this episode. It's awesome. I wish you the best and things." And just a really, really nice guy. He didn't have to say anything. He could have just finished up his hair and just walked out. But he took the time to thank me and to welcome me into this family for just this one episode. So I won't forget that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's really wonderful.
I've heard some wonderful things about Matt, and that he does that so many times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what messages would you like to send with this episode?
Ooh, wow. Well, I would say that in Camille, you mentioned Amy Holden Jones, one of the major producers and the writer of this episode, along with Tiana.
Chris as well.
Majumdar, I think it's how Langham is the last name. Yes.
Yes.
And, Chris Sumian, I think I'm pronouncing their names right, but Amy, Chris, and Tiana, wow, they really took this episode. I've done episodic plenty of times, and it can become just kind of not run of the mill, because every writer definitely takes the episode very seriously. It's their episode, they're excited about it, but I can feel a different air about this particular episode. This show is amazing as it is already. Just as I was fans of it, obviously we're doing this interview podcast, and we know that. But it seemed that this particular script, because they know Charles, they knew the story, they went out and found it, and decided to take the time to write something very specifically based off of that, and put so much of the storyline into it for this episode that when you ask me what message I want to send, it's in the words already. I mean, when this episode airs, the love between these two characters, me and my wife, it will be very apparent, I'm sure, because of the way it was written. The amount of excitement that my wife has for being a mother and for having a family will be very much apparent. And last but not least, how can I say this? The miracle of childbirth. I haven't given birth to a child, but I have two sisters that have. There's so much that goes into it in that hospital. Not just the 9 months previous, but in that hospital. And so, having a strong support system and having the right professionals, healthcare professionals, it's tantamount to anything else other than God's grace on earth, is having someone, the right professionals in the room that are going to listen to that mother to be and take everything she says seriously, and dedicate the correct amount of resources and time and care and consideration so that a healthy baby is brought into this world. And so what I take away from it is that everybody should follow Charles's work to make sure that legislation is continued to advance. He's already done a great job pushing legislation and getting things passed in the House, but more procedures and legislation put in place so that every woman that goes into that hospital to bring a child into this world leaves out of the hospital with that child, and they're both happy. So I don't know. The episode speaks for itself, honestly.
There's one of the things I was doing when I was doing research on this was that the state of Georgia, where everything is based on this show, is one of the worst states in the United States to give birth in.
Wow.
And I was just surprised, but I was just like, wow. I didn't know it was that bad until I was researching for this podcast.
And that's the importance of the episode. And I think that's why everybody in the Fox staff on The Resident is making this such a priority. If you look at the social media, what you guys have been posting, and Kayla, what you were just bringing up about these numbers is that what's heartbreaking and frustrating is that from what the small amount of research I've done, and I know you've done so much more, is that these cases are preventable.
Yes.
These tragedies are preventable. It's not like the technology does not exist. It's not as if the facilities and the amount of healthcare workers that are needed are under allocated. No, it's just carelessness.
Yeah.
It's literally carelessness and bias. There's a lot of bias in there, and that's something that when I watched one of the interviews with Charles Johnson IV, is an interviewer asked him how much of a factor do you think race played in the tragedy of Kira Dixon Johnson. And surprisingly to me, Charles said, hey, I don't know, and that's not something I'm even worried about right now. It doesn't matter. What matters is she's no longer here, and I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. We can address all of those different things later, but first, what it is about all women, all going in and making sure that, again, we're training and we're teaching, and there's different systems put in place. So
yeah, I read one of the statistics that said that black women are more likely to die than white women by like 270%. You know, it's saddening to me that race is a factor. I don't know how much of a factor it is in Charles's story, but I mean, statistically, it is a factor. You know,
yes.
Yeah.
And it's unacceptable. It's one of those things that should never happen, and you'll see that in the episode. There will be homage paid to the fact that this is something that is obviously unreversible, but at the same time, we need to acknowledge that there's someone to blame. This isn't one of those things that, it just happened and that's just terrible. No, there's blame to be placed, rightfully so. And so that's one of the biggest keys to this episode, is placing the blame where it should be put, where it should be placed, and making sure that it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. It should have. No woman should have to worry about going into the hospital and not coming out alive. Especially, I mean,
nobody should.
Nobody should. You should be able to go in that hospital, no matter what the procedure. Not even, from, giving birth to heart surgery. You shouldn't have to worry, am I going to come out of this alive? But it's always on your mind. Yes,
exactly. These are the healthcare professionals that, are supposed to be very thorough in their work. There's no error, there's no margin for mistakes, or else don't do the surgery.
Right.
Yes.
That's how I feel. Is you're going to say, hey, come in and I'm going to fix your car. Well, then you should know what you're doing. If you're going to fix on my body, you should know exactly. There should be zero margin for error. As close to zero as possible. Not 50%. 60%. Then don't do it. Don't do it.
Because this is a life you're having in your hands, and when you're considering, giving birth, you're handling two lives.
2 lives, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
do you have anything else to add?
About the episode, about the experience. There's Facebook town hall meeting that's supposed to happen with Charles Johnson IV. Charles is going to be doing that on Facebook after the episode.
Where?
But it's
4Kira4Moms? Is it on her page?
On the Facebook, I think so.
Because I saw a tweet about it on Twitter.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this interview.
I appreciate you both.
For joining us. I appreciate everything.
But we want to touch on, before we leave, the episodes that are coming up. which is episode 221, Stuck is Foretold, which airs on April the 22nd.
Yep.
And Stuck is Foretold is about a blood shortage. So they're going to be talking about what Conrad's going to go to the distance to help another patient, obviously, but that one's about a blood shortage, and Jesse's getting sicker, and Jesse's dad is back, and so is the Brett Christopher B. Duncan. He's back as well. 222's press release has been out, and it airs on April the 29th. And it's called Broker and Broker. And that episode is about Chastain dealing with a financial crisis. There's a lottery winner, and Bill tries to smooch him. So I like seeing Bill trying to get money out of people. But, and then Jesse's obviously getting sicker and sicker, and Alec is in 222. So we're going to see Alec, hi Miles, back again. And they're going to deal with maybe an organ donation. Jesse might have to get some new kidneys.
Yeah.
So that's that episode. Oh, and speaking of that episode, I saw in the press release that John Noble's going to be in the episode from Fringe and many other shows, but Fringe was like my show back in the day. So
I've never heard of him.
He played Walter on Fringe.
I never seen it.
Okay.
Wait, I just looked at his picture. I know him. Oh my god. I know him from another movie, I think.
He's been in a lot
Lord
of stuff.
of the Rings.
Yeah, he was in Lord of the Rings.
He played one of the kings, the scary looking king that was like possessed by this snake mouth guy. Ugh, I hated him.
But I was excited to see that. That is the penultimate episode of season 2, Broker and Broker. And then the season finale, season being the key word here, guys, don't freak out. Season finale of season 2 is the Unbefriended. We really don't have a plot line yet. All we have is a title. No. But it airs on May 6th.
Yeah.
And then we will have a wait. We don't know how long of a wait. I'm assuming we'll have a return in September.
Yeah. But they start filming us like around July, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
July
assuming we're going to have the way they air this show. I mean, it's such a high-rated show. I can't imagine Fox not airing it September to May. So, with all that being said, I want to thank Kamal for joining us.
Yes.
We want to say that if you liked this episode, go check out our other episodes, obviously, on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play. We're on 4 platforms, so you can't really miss it. And I put links to all of them on multiple social media sites. The Facebook group, which is the Resident Fox fans. You can come join us there and talk to us about The Resident. You get links about everything that they release. And just stay up to date, talk to us, whatever. And there's also the Instagram account that has the same name, the Resident Fox fans. There's Twitter, which is @ResidentPodcast. And so there's multiple ways to get in touch with us. And then there's the email address, which is theResidentRulebreakers@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So, this is the end of this episode. We'll tune in next week to hear us discuss If Not Now When. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.